You're listening to Tony Terzi. It's Terzi Talk, here on the Talk of Connecticut, AM 1360, 1470, 610, and 1240.
Our next guest, one that I'm so happy to see in person, given what he's been through this summer. It's Kevin Brookman, the blogger from Hartford, keeping folks at City Hall and elsewhere in city agencies. Really, any issues going on in Hartford, he's got his thumb on it. He's so connected in the city. Kevin Brookman, We the People Hartford. Check out his blog, We the People Hartford. Kevin had a health scare, and this is his third stroke that he's had. He had it on July 5th, and now it was so nice to see him walk here in the studio this morning. He was unshaven, but that's okay. This is radio. And he said the doctors have told him now that he's on blood thinners for this condition that he has, this genetic condition, which essentially where his blood can be sticky and therefore can clot easily. He's on blood thinners, and so he can't use the regular razor blade to shave. So that's the excuse he gave me anyway. Kev, so good to see you.
Yeah, I think the last time I talked to you was from my hospital bed.
It was.
Sometime in July or beginning of August.
Yeah, so. It was.
Which surprised the doctor when he came in. I said, hold on, I'm on the radio.
He can't stay away from keeping the people of Hartford in the know. It's amazing. So what are some of the hot stories now that you've been working on?
The city's been pretty quiet. There's not much going on, is there?
Mm-hmm. Since Luke stormed in and won the nomination there.
Well, that's only the beginning of it. You know, we've got this Dillon Stadium mess that's going on.
What is happening? The city can't account for $700,000?
Well, that was, the current report this morning. I had that on my blog over a week ago. One of the lawyers for the architect sent a letter to the city of Hartford saying his client hadn't been paid, even though the city had paid the vendor.
So the vendor hadn't paid the architect.
Right, he didn't reimburse him. And he said, by the way, there's bills in there from the design company from Florida for the dome or the covering over the roof. And those don't appear to be valid because that company says they don't bill until the work is started and installed.
Oh,
so
no.
Somebody apparently made up an invoice saying that this company did all the design work, and that company claims they don't charge for design work.
Oh, no.
So, somebody that's very familiar with the investigation said yesterday there's got to be several people at City Hall having sleepless nights. And, when you get summoned before a federal grand jury, that's never a good thing. So it'll be interesting to see. Most of that is supposed to be kept secret. But as soon as the subpoenas were delivered the other day to City Hall, my understanding is the Corp Counsel, Henry Alexander, took him over to the mayor's office, and then the mayor told his people to make sure you leak these subpoenas to the media. So I think they're doing the duck and cover. The same thing Eddie Perez did. Try to tell everybody that, I'm not a bad guy, this is all untrue, here's all the information, and then come to find out it's going to come back to haunt all of them.
Essentially the economic development guru, he resigned over a week ago or so.
He resigned, but my understanding is he skated a federal investigation several years ago with Buddy Cianci, who was the mayor imprisoned in Providence for corruption. And Deller, from what I'm told, was a cooperating witness for the feds in the conviction of Buddy Cianci. So hopefully they don't give it to him twice. This time I hope he has to face the consequences of whatever happened. But I think, there's more than enough questions. The first one is the original developer. And I'm not familiar with the original steps too well, but I think his name was T.J. Clinch, was a man that was coming forward and originally came up with the proposal and the idea to redevelop Dillon Stadium. And that started taking shape a couple years ago, and then out of the blue, he was pushed out of the way for these new guys to come in that nobody knew who they were. One of them was a youth soccer coach, from what I understand, but with some connections to City Hall. So these new people came in, and this whole design is taken off, basically shoved down the throats of the people of Hartford by a couple of council people and the development director.
Was this going on simultaneous to the negotiations for the baseball stadium, and we just didn't hear about it until after?
I think the timeline is pretty close.
Okay.
The stadium was like the Yard Goat Stadium was 18 months before we really heard about it.
Right. But
I think, the TJ Clinch and the whole Dillon Stadium deal have been going on kind of simultaneous.
It's a beautiful piece of property down there off of 91. I mean, it could be.
Underutilized, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The graffiti on the buildings and the vandalism and everything down there. It's just, I'm not even sure, I want to see the baseball stadium succeed. I think everybody in Hartford wants to see it succeed after it's putting us on the hook for $4.5 million every year for the next 20 or 25 years.
You're talking about city taxpayers.
Right.
Yeah.
So we don't want to see a hole in the ground sitting there that's a failure. We want to see it succeed. But I have serious doubts, especially now that New Britain is getting their own team. You're not going to lure those people around or away from New Britain that were faithful to the Rock Cats.
The hardcores will stay there, even though it's not affiliated baseball. It's still baseball. It's still their city, and they're going to stay there.
And one of the big issues with Hartford, and hopefully Luke Bronin can wrap his head around this, is the gun violence. People are, no matter where you go, that's the connotation Hartford has now. It's an unsafe city. People are getting shot on every street corner, which isn't entirely true. But most people aren't going to want to bring their families and their children into Hartford.
28 homicides this year already. We had 19 last year.
Well, I got what they call an unusual incident report. And the number of guns in Hartford, every time you see a gun arrest, and it says in there criminal possession of a firearm, that essentially means that person is a convicted felon who has no business touching a gun, owning a gun, possessing a gun, but they're caught with a gun. So the criminal possession means that it's a convicted felon caught with a gun. The majority of arrests you see in Hartford for gun possession have that charge in there. So these are convicted felons that have already shown with their first conviction that they can't conform to our laws and society, and now they see the need to be carrying a gun. This unusual incident report this morning, last night they had a domestic violence incident in the city. A man tried to strangle his wife. And when the police got there, they finally located the suspect, and he was in the bedroom pretending he was sleeping. But he was positioned kind of unusual, and he had his hand under the pillow. And when they handcuffed him and everything, took him into custody, a loaded handgun was under that pillow.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, that could have very easily been a disaster.
Oh, cops could have been shot.
Yeah. We had one in New York the other night where a police officer, it was a felon that was out, I believe he was on parole, shot a police officer in the head and murdered him, assassinated him, over a stolen bike. And so much of this is drug-related. PCP is a terrible drug that makes people, there's stories in the news about people hacking their families up and things because they're high on PCP. Now, somebody that's high on PC will think nothing of pulling a gun and shooting you or I or shooting a police officer.
Nope.
So we need to get real control over this scourge in our cities of the handguns out there. And until the courts start taking it serious, if you're a convicted felon, you're caught with a gun, there's no second chances. No parole, no probation. You're going away for a long time. And until our courts start making that decision, that's the way they're going to enforce this. There's so many other things, the drug sales, which usually involve guns anyways, but things that we're imprisoning people for that in the whole grand scheme of things aren't huge issues. But handguns and people that are willing to carry a handgun, they're not doing it to protect you and I if we're in a restaurant getting robbed. They're doing it to shoot somebody when the drug deal goes bad or something like that.
Speaking to Kevin Brookman from We the People Hartford, that's We the People Hartford blog. You can find him at wethepeoplehartford.com or .org.
wethepeoplehartford.com or .blogspot.com.
Okay.
There's two ways to get to it.
wethepeoplehartford.com. The easiest way to go. So he's on top of things. He posts every day, sometimes several times a day. He is so connected in the city of Hartford that if you want to know the real story, not to borrow a title of the show that my father hosts on Fox 61.
And congratulations to your father,
thanks.
by the way, for getting into the Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame with Brad, and it was very nice. We got a call. Ron in Madison is on line one. Good morning, Ron. You have a question for Kevin Brookman.
Well, I just want to thank you very much, Tony, for having Kevin in. And I want to thank Kevin Brookman immensely for coming in, and I'm glad he's doing okay physically. I'm sorry to hear he's been sick, but I'm glad he's okay. But I'm going to tell you, if it wasn't for people like Kevin coming on the air like this and talking about local issues and things that are going on in that city of Hartford where I grew up, I cannot believe it's the same city that I grew up in as a kid. And nobody's talking about it. We wouldn't be hearing anything about Hartford right now if Kevin wasn't on the air.
No, you're right.
So I want to thank both of you very much. We need more local issues talked about instead of just presidential candidates and stuff like that.
Well,
that's the ways down the road. This stuff is happening right now in front of us, in front of taxpayers. Every night there's killings or shootings in Hartford, or there's fires. I've never seen so many fires in my life in Hartford.
There were a couple more last night.
Turn around, there's buildings just being burnt out of the ground. It's unbelievable.
All right, Ronnie. Thank you, buddy.
You're listening to Tony Terzi. It's Terzi Talk here on the Talk of Connecticut, AM 1360, 1470, 610, and 1240. You're listening to Tony Terzi. It's Terzi Talk here on the Talk of Connecticut, AM 1360, 1470, 610, and 1240.
All right, we're back here in studio with Kevin Brookman from We the People Hartford blog. And Kevin, one of your posts from Thursday, by the way, thank you for encouraging people to go to my professional Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Tony Terzi Fox 61. That's facebook.com/Tony Terzi Fox 61. We're just trying to, with all of the on-air personalities, trying to increase our social media presence. And if you are on Facebook at some point this weekend and want to throw me a like, you will be paid $1.98. So there you have it. Not by me, but by somebody. Maybe Kevin. Kevin, interesting blog post here. Angel Morales again? Explain to people what that's about.
He's I hate to call him a Democratic Party operative, but he's somebody that was a classic example of the second chances and how they were supposed to work. Morales, years ago, was, from what I understand, impersonating an attorney and was collecting money from people offering to represent him. They caught up with him. He actually did time over it. And then when he started over again, he was given a lot of opportunities. Somehow he got involved with politics. And it's just problem after problem after problem, and people don't realize this. He ran for the legislature a few years ago, and we had a little bit of an argument before that, and then he finally convinced me that he had turned his life around and he deserved a second chance. So I got involved with him. I got involved with his campaign, and the more I saw, the more I said, I got to get away from this. He got involved with the Citizens Election Fund, and he didn't have a job at the time. He would do little political pieces, make a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there. So when we started, he got his check from the state for his campaign fund, and he shows up at my house one night with a Lincoln Town Car. And I was like, what is that? Where's that coming from? He's like, oh, I rented that for the campaign out of the citizens' election money. I said, are you crazy? I says, first of all, what message is that going to send when your opponent sees you using the money like that, driving around in a Lincoln Town Car? The first thing I would say is, what do you think he's going to do when he gets to the Capitol with your money? I said, that car has to go back tomorrow. He refused to take it back to the rental agency. I said,
so you were done then?
I said, I'm done. I'm washing my hands of this, and I walked away. Then it came out that elections enforcement did an investigation of him. He misappropriated over $20,000 from his campaign.
Oh, boy.
No receipts, nothing. So elections enforcement fined him and his campaign treasurer, $10,000 and $5,000 respectively. Plus, I think they were supposed to pay back the $19,000 that was missing. They never paid it back. So this week, the elections enforcement, at their monthly meeting, went into executive session to discuss turning the whole issue over to the Attorney General to go after him civilly to collect the money. Now, in the meantime, he was just paid $5,000 by the Hartford Democratic Town Committee for I don't know what. But there's several other, also during the campaign, when he was running for state rep, there was a young man that made an allegation that Morales had picked him up in the Lincoln Town car and then abused him or whatever, molested him back at his campaign headquarters. There's a police report on the blog from the Hartford Police Department that details everything. Then this past session, he got a job at the legislature as a clerk for one of the committees. And then, from what I've just been told, he got involved in trying to do a shakedown on a couple businesses, showing his Capitol ID and his business card, saying that I can get things done for you because I work at the Capitol. The Capitol Police, from what I understand, are investigating that right now. But it's just the type of thing that, some people just should stay away from politics. And this is what gives the whole system a bad name. And I just want to go back to one thing that Ron had talked about.
Yeah.
He said more people need to talk about what's going on in Hartford. There's plenty of people that are talking about it already. What we need are people in power that are listening to what the people are saying. There's people, both with the stadium and with the Dillon Stadium deal, the Rockcat Stadium, or the Yard Goat Stadium, and Dillon Stadium, that religiously go to council meeting after council meeting, raise the red flags. This letter of credit looks like a fraud. This doesn't make any sense. What due diligence was done to look into these companies. Probably one you've talked to before, Rick Rothstein, Ann Goshtigian, and a few others that are there every month. Alyssa Peterson, people like that are there every month bringing up what the problems are. But we've had a city hall and a council that has just closed their ears. If it's their idea and they want to shove it through, they do. It doesn't matter what the electorate is saying.
Including Sean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Sean was, after the Yard Goats, he just belittled some of the people. There's one woman, Joanne Bauer, who did a lot of legwork on it and had a lot of facts and figures on the Yard Goats. He just, the night the council approved it, he just belittled her from the dais about how her information was always wrong and this and that. And it was just, this is what a democracy is about. In a democracy, you have the right for the dissenting views. If you take it all into consideration, you weigh it, and then make your decisions from there. But I think in the end, we're going to see the federal investigation is going to open a lot of people's eyes as to what happened at City Hall. Who knew what and when, and what did they do about it?
Pedro going to be in some hot water?
I don't know how you can be so close to a situation like this and not. The bottom line is, in the end, you're the chief executive, and I don't know about criminally, but in the end, it's all going to come back on your shoulders anyways.
Yeah, in a similar way, what happened with Louisville and that book coming out, the Louisville men's basketball program.
Oh, yeah.
The prostitution and people saying when you're a coach who has his finger on the pulse of everything, a lot of people find it hard to believe that he didn't know that was going on. But I think what you find a lot
of times, people just turn a blind eye to it. If I don't acknowledge it or I don't listen to what they're saying, then it's not happening.
I don't hear anything. Blah 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 blah.
And that's we see that all the time.
Is Hartford going to be better off with Bronin? In your view, people people around him, is Hartford going to be better off?
I sure hope so. I don't claim to be a close friend of Luke's. I don't know him real well. I first met him 3 or 4 years ago with State Rep Angel Arce.
Yeah.
We had gone to his office to talk about our concerns. At the time, the state resources were being pulled back from the shooting task force, and we had gone to his office, set up a quick meeting, and voiced our concerns. And Angel Arce is a great ally for the city of Hartford.
And Luke was with the governor.
Luke was with the governor's office at the time. So we met with him. He was very responsive. That was my first introduction to him. And then I've seen him, him and his wife occasionally downtown, things like that. But the one thing that I have talked to Luke, others have talked to him, the night of the primary, I said to both him and all of his, or the majority of his council people, the people of Hartford have put a huge amount of trust in you today by electing you through this primary. Now it's up to you guys to turn around and do what they are expecting you to do. And I think one of the big issues especially with Pedro Segura, one of the basic rules of management is you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
I'm hoping Luke brings in a top-notch team that will not be here for paychecks, but will be here for the people of Hartford. That's what we need. We've got, even Deller, the development director for the city of Hartford, probably making, I would imagine, $120,000, $130,000 a year. Went home to his family and his house in Providence every weekend. Now, he didn't care about it enough for the city he's the development director for to move his family here, buy a house in Hartford, make this his home, but he commuted back and forth. That's not the way we do this.
No.
If we have, I don't always agree with residency for department heads, but it makes a lot of sense. If you don't care enough to live in the city where you're required to plow the streets and pick up trash and things like that, then you don't care enough about the city to take our paycheck. So go to your hometown where you live and ask them to hire you, because we want people that live and breathe Hartford. And I think that's what we're going to see with Luke.
That's Kevin Brookman, wethepeoplehartford.blogspot.com or wethepeoplehartford.com. We got about 30 seconds. You want to tease a story or a blog post that you'll have coming up?
No, I just think this Dillon Stadium thing is still going to keep growing legs over the next few weeks.
Okay.
Like I said before, it's never a good thing to have a federal investigation into you. And anybody that knows anything about the feds, they play to keep. They don't take stinkers of cases. They want cases that they can claim a win and make headlines with it. And I think they have a big one right now.
All right. Kevin Brookman, happy to have you on the road to health again.
Thank you.
Happy to have you in studio, and you are welcome anytime, my friend. Make sure you check him out online, wethepeoplehartford.com or wethepeoplehartford.blogspot.com. He's got his finger on the pulse of the capital city. Check him out. He's an excellent, excellent writer. Sources everything 10 times. That's Kevin Brookman.
You're listening to Tony Terzi. It's Terzi Talk, here on the Talk of Connecticut, AM 1360, 1470, 610, and 1240.